Good morning, everyone. My name is Lloyd Day. I'm the Deputy Director General of IICA. Welcome to this panel, A New Narrative, Creating a New Narrative, Agri-Food Systems for Healthy People and a Healthy Planet. So many of you are just upstairs. You've heard the narrative that many are saying that the food system is broken. This panel is to talk about a new narrative, to talk about the role of the Americas in feeding the world, but also the richness of Americas, the biodiversity of the Americas, the ingenuity of American farmers from north to south, from Canada in the north to Argentina in the south. We have with us a very distinguished panel. We have Dr. Manuel Otero, the Director General of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, my boss, and so I have the difficult role of saying stop. The Honorable Geraldine Mukeshimana, the Vice President of IFAD, or FIDA in Spanish. The Honorable Laura Elena Suazo Torres, the Secretary of State for Agriculture and Livestock of the Republic of Honduras, another boss who I have to try to control time because it's already ticking. And Eugenio Diaz Bonilla, a senior scholar of IICA and IFPRI. We're going to begin with the Director General of IICA, giving a keynote speech, and then follow up from Eugenia, then we'll move to questions. So Director General, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you to organizers. It is a real honor to be participating in such a high-level panel with the Minister, with the Vice President of IFAD, with my friend, with Eugenio. I would like to start off emphasizing that the series of events on international scene defines a new food geopolitics and put agriculture at the top of the global agenda. This cannot go unnoticed by the Americas since we are the most important food exporting region in the world and we have the most of the natural resources. So we are facing a great opportunity that we cannot and we are not going to waste. But to capitalize the new opportunities, we have to recognize that we must build a new narrative. And the hard reality is that we are still under the negative effects of an old narrative. But first of all, what is a narrative? In my view, it is a set of beliefs, values, priorities, messages, all of them connected, coherent, convincing, trying to seduce or attract some part of the society. But also, this narrative is a very powerful input for a new generation of agriculture policies and development strategies. What happens with the old agriculture narrative? Agriculture is still related with an extensive sector, extractive one, with weak linkages with the rest of the economy, providing poor nutrition and in some cases associated with environmental and social problems. So to break down this vicious circle and put in motion a virtuous one, IICA, jointly with Columbia University and other key actors from public and private sector from the Americas, is trying to identify the elements for a new narrative, transmitting a more positive and ambitious vision of agriculture. What are some of the fundamental questions that have to be responded in the new narrative? What is the role of agriculture in the society? What kinds of farming systems exist and which ones should be promoted? How should agriculture interact with the environment? How does agriculture contribute to the economy and society? How should agriculture community respond to challenges? In this way, agriculture narratives guide decision-making at multiple levels, from individual farmers and communities to national governments and international organizations. They shape policies, research, funding, cost, and public perception. What are the key elements of a new narrative? First, agriculture has to be viewed as a part of a broader food ecosystem. Secondly, universal food security means healthy, nutritious food for all people at all times. Third, Latin American and Caribbean countries can produce sufficient food generating positive environmental outcomes. Fourth, agriculture is a critical part of the solution to climate change. Fifth, transition must involve a just transition for agriculture. And six, agriculture plays an important role in energy security. Seventh, trade as a tool for sustainable, resilient development. Indeed, a new agriculture narrative can shift mindsets, foster collaboration through a new diplomacy. By the way, the motto that is for this event, and align agriculture practices, accelerating the adoption of sustainable agricultural systems that are not just productive, but also regenerative, climate resilient, and socially equitable. There is a golden triangle in which all of us should concentrate efforts. We need a new generation of public policies. We need to have access to new technologies, and we need more financing. And in the center of this triangle, farmers are the main actors for all these efforts. Finally, I invite all of you to participate in this journey to debate and communicate the basis for a new agriculture narrative. We are elaborating a living document, and we would like to receive all types of comments in order to have a new vision for agriculture and be transmitted into a new generation of policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director General. And the author of that living document is Dr. Eugenio Diaz-Bonilla, Senior Scholar at IFPRI and IICA. And Dr. Bonilla, if you could share with us a little bit about the document and where the status of that is.
Well, thank you.
Son.
Yes, thank you very much, Lloyd and Manuel, and I'm very honored to be here with the Minister and the Vice President. The new narrative that Manuel is advocating needs to consider several facts. Well, first, agricultural performance proved Malthusians wrong. No? We moved from 3 billion people in 1960 to more than 8 billion people now, and we are producing 31% more calories per capita and 34% more proteins per capita, using only 10% more of land, and with real prices adjusted by inflation that are 9% below now than the 60s and 70s. Of course, this has had an important, very positive effects in terms of health, economic productivity, social functioning, and of course, even peace. That's the first point. Second, the Americas have been a key factor in this. As Manuel mentioned, is the main exporter. All the Americas are 23% of all production at the global level. But most important is that it's the largest net food exporter. And for some crops, are crucial. For instance, in volume, 84% of oilseeds come from the Americas, and in the case of soybeans, 96%. That all this in volume. Cereals, 43%. Corn 70, bovine and poultry meat 46 and 52, coffee 53, 66. But it's not only the traditional products. If you look at fruits, vegetables, and a variety of other products, the Americas produce in volume more than 65% of all exports at the global level, including quinoa, lemon juice, string beans, asparagus, papaya, cranberries, etc. So I'm not going to go through the list, but it's long. Third, in the case of Latin America, the population tripled, but still the production of calories per capita in Latin America are more than the levels that I mentioned before. Of course, there are problems of poverty and distribution, but in terms of production has been very strong. And in the case of fruits and vegetables, for instance, in the case of Central America and Mexico, compared to the 60s, now it's almost 60% higher per capita production of fruits and vegetables. So, and all this with emissions that are 13% less than the 1990. For the food systems, by the way, the President of the Central Bank mentioned 31% agricultural emissions. 31% is food systems. Agriculture is only half, and of that, there is a part that is land use change that had to be looked at. Fourth, Latin America has 23% of the planet forest, 31% of fresh water, and 36% of the CO2 in forest. And also of the 10 countries with largest biodiversity, 6 are in Latin America and the top 2. Therefore, Latin America is crucial as carbon sink, at the regulation of the planetary cycle of water and oxygen, preservation of biodiversity, and for achieving all the adaptation, resilience, and mitigation objectives of the Paris Agreement. So, in conclusion, the Americas, and Latin America also in particular, play a crucial role on two aspects: food security and environmental sustainability. And strengthening these two roles need, as the narrative emphasized, a strong effort and persistent effort on science, technology, and innovation, precisely the focus of this forum.
Thank you, Eugenio. And before I move on, I want to acknowledge the presence of the former Director General of IICA and also the former Secretary of Agriculture of Mexico, our good friend, Dr. Victor Villalobos. Thank you for joining us. Moving on to questions of the panelists. So we heard a lot of the statistics about how the Americas are a breadbasket for the world. How do we move from agriculture as a risk or as a villain, as was mentioned, not just here, but everywhere, to agriculture is really part of the solution that Eugenio mentioned, they mentioned on stage as well. How do we move from that, and are there any examples in your countries or in your regions that you can discuss? Based on the petition of my boss, Dr. Suazo, we're going to go to the Vice President of IFAD, Dr. Jardine. The floor is yours.
Yeah, at IFAD, the new narrative, I mean, it's not new, but the narrative that we are developing around, we are an organization that works with small-scale farmers. So the big narrative is to convey to the world that these people are the stewards of the water that the world is using. They're stewards of biodiversity, so that's a big thing. And for small-scale farmers who contributed the least to the climate change and who are being hit the hardest by the climate change, we are telling the world that investing in them, they are the agent of sustainable food security, because they are at the front of the food production. They produce, by the way, the more diverse food that is in the world. And also they produce a large amount of food. So 78% of the food that is consumed into the lower and middle income countries, they come from them. And they supply 50% of the food to the world. So it's important that they don't get forgotten about that. So what we do, again, is making sure that, I think the first panel mentioned it, the small-scale farmers are business owners. And that's a narrative that the world needs to have. And IFAD works with the governments to make sure that their businesses are viable. So how do we make these businesses viable in a sustainable way? That is a narrative that we need to be also conveying to the world. And also investing in them into a nature positive way. So where we work in various countries, in Ethiopia, for instance, we had a project that worked. I mean, Ethiopia is one of the countries where we have the richest, the largest reach. We worked with the communities to work in agroforestry so that wherever they are producing the food, but they're also generating some positive to the climate. And also we worked in various countries, like in Bolivia, I think this year is the year of Camelides. So we worked with the people in Bolivia to make sure that we are using solar-powered pumps to extract underground water so that these animals that are providing so much needed livelihood to the communities can have the needed water. That's another narrative, that we don't take the Camelides like that, but how do we get them into the whole system so that they can be not only degrading environment, but they are being used also to make sure that the communities and are getting their livelihoods. We come from Rwanda, so one of my favorite projects that I implemented was to work with the rural women to provide again the solar-powered irrigation for them to be able to produce vegetables. And that project has large impact because it is not only using the technology that is nature friendly, but it's also intensifying the production of vegetables so that can contribute to the nutrition of the families, to the nutrition of the communities, to generate income for these women. So the whole society is benefiting because of those investments that are nature positive, but also that are building a different narrative around agriculture and small-scale farmers. So I think that's in a big nut. It's important that we don't see only the negative around agriculture, but we also look at these people, what are they contributing to the world that is used for, and I think agriculture has a lot to offer into that space.
Thank you, Jardine. I love your initial remarks where you say that farmers are the best stewards of the land, and I think that's very important, and people need to remember that. You also mentioned the importance of women in agriculture, and we're honored to have Minister Suazo as, I think, our longest-serving female minister in IICA. Out of 34 countries, we have a few women ministers, 3 women ministers, and we're very honored to have you here with us. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about Honduras, a rich, beautiful country, but also suffering from climate challenges as well. Minister Suazo.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for this invitation to be part of this panel, and especially thank you to you, the Inter-American Cooperation for Agriculture. I am Laura Suazo, Minister of Agriculture and Livestock at Honduras. I have the privilege to be the first woman to be nominated as Secretary of State in this sector. But more than a privilege, it's a life kind of, let's say, challenge, because working as a minister, one of the first demands we have is food security. But food security, even though it is a very simple word or term, it is one of the challenges as well. And climate change is making a contribution to make it difficult, besides other external and internal factors. Before I answer this question about how we can move from agriculture as a climate risk to agriculture as the solution, of part of the solution, I also would like to point at the fact that climate change is one of the most, I would say, terrifying situation that is affecting dramatically the present and the future of food. And food is what makes us alive. So we must be more responsible to find out ways, like collective ways, to cope with climate change. In the case of Honduras, Honduras is a small country. It's surrounded by the 2 oceans. Just because of that, we have these beautiful beaches, but we have like extreme situations every end of the year because the storms and extreme events, climatic events, hurricanes, etc. But if we think about the contributions to the gases de efecto invernadero, the emissions, we almost contribute with very, very 0.1%. But we have this impact so negative each year. So coming back to become a minister, it is not only about being a good professional or intelligent or good negotiator. is about finding ways for making it possible for a country that, in addition to other economic and social factors, it is also dealing with a drought corridor that makes it difficult for producing. So anyway, we have to find solutions. And this year, we have been working on not this year, I bet the last 20 years after we recognize, or after being in the first 3 places of more vulnerable countries around the world, we start working on many actions. But for the last 3 years that I have been working as the secretary, some of the most relevant that I will just list now because of time are in the first place that we are working on research about the adaptation of crops to the, let's say, drought condition especially. So this year, we were able to release 2 varieties, one of bean and another one of corn. So in the cane of corn, it's called for us Maíz Blanco. It's called Nutridicta. B01 is high in zinc, high performance, drought tolerant, low tropical zones. It's a good quality of grain. But what is important here is the zinc. On the other hand, we also released a new variety of bean. And the bean is high in the iron. And iron and zinc are very important for the kids not to go into malnourishment. So just here we have 2 good examples. If we want to kind of be part of the solution, we have to invest rapidly on multiplying these seeds and make it available for the whole population. There are other examples, like for the first time in history, we are working on the mapping soil fertility for the whole nation, not only for this or this part of the country, but worldwide. And we need that, to make it available in the web, like a public information for everyone. There are one aspect that although we are making some improvements, we still are very, very behind. And it is about how to conserve harvesting water, irrigation projects, irrigation plans for the whole country. So about 2 months ago, we were able, for the first time in the history of Honduras, to start a program that is called National Master Plan for Water for Irrigation. And that is going to be for each departamento or county, regardless where it is located. Every one of these districts must have the information, the scientific information that we need to then make investments on that. And it is important because also to mention the contribution of other collaborators. For instance, for this master plan for water, we, the president gave us $1 million for this master plan, but CAF, el Banco de Desarrollo de Latinoamérica, gave us another $1 million as a donation. So I am not making like publicity for them, but I think it's a good example. Of course, we need this information so later we can make loans with CAF to put it into practice. But there are many, many actions. I think research, biodiversity, not only promoting one crop, even though we are a small country, we need to do different crops and another, let's say, initiatives. Finally, I just will share about the importance of data information, data gathering, and also communication. So for data information, farmers, regardless if it is a small, medium, or big farmer, need data. In our country, the last time we have the updating of the national agricultural census was 30 years ago. So now again, we start about a month ago. We are right now taking data in the whole country, so we will be able, from the government and from the private sector, to make good decisions about agriculture. And the last one is about communication, how important it is to communicate information about climate, about meteorological behavior, or let's say information that will let the farmers know if it is going to be kind of raining available for this time or not. In our cases, we only have kind of two seasons. It's raining season and non-raining season. And we have the El Niño, La Niña, every 3 to, I don't know, we don't know now. Sometimes it's 6 months and they change. And now the scientists say it is no El Niño, it is neutral. I don't know what is that. What I know is there is no water for production in the country. And if we don't invest on infrastructure, that is going to be very difficult for many countries. But for countries like mine, we need to do all this scientific work and also invest on infrastructure for harvesting water. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Suazo. I think it's really exciting to hear about what innovation is doing in Honduras, especially with biofortification. And you talked about how important the soil is and how important water usage is. So innovation throughout agriculture is really key. And one of the most important things that we've been discussing and promoting at IICA is the bioeconomy. How do we move from a fossil fuel-based economy to a bioeconomy? And so I wanted to ask the Director General of IICA, what is IICA doing in terms of promoting the bioeconomy, and what do you see the future of a bioeconomy for the Americas?
Yes, first of all, a new agriculture narrative for Latin America and the Caribbean needs urgently to internalize the concept of bioeconomy and circular economy to drive sustainable transformation across the region's food systems. This approach undoubtedly could foster new economic opportunities, from biofuels to green fertilizers, while addressing environmental concerns such as soil health, given the fact that probably more than 30% of our territories are affected by soil, how do you say, soil?
Degradation.
Degradation, thank you. Biodiversity loss, as it was mentioned, and waste management. In turn, this would contribute to food security and rural development, position Latin America and the Caribbean as a leader in sustainable agriculture and the global transition toward green, inclusive economies. Indeed, the region's vast land resources and tropical climates make it an ideal candidate for bioenergy production, particularly through the cultivation of biofuels such as sugarcane ethanol and biodiesel from soybeans. Bioeconomy has to be viewed as a bridge between production and environment. It also represents a great opportunity to use biomass, promoting local development and making significant contributions to local carbon economy. Definitely, it's the best answer to cope with resource limitations, climate change, and loss of biodiversity. Let me emphasize that IICA belongs to the Global Bioeconomy Summit. Seems in some part of Africa was held the Global Summit on Bioeconomy. We have launched a network of bioeconomy for Latin American countries. We are working also in the area of biofuels for aviation, working in bioinputs. So IICA pretends to be a key actor in these transitions towards more green and inclusive economies. Thank you.
It's a fitting subject here in Iowa, which is the heart of the bioeconomy in the United States. The ethanol boom in this country has been a huge driver of economic development here, and also it's an investment in agriculture. It's an investment in the sector, and so it's important on both sides of the coin. Dr. Geraldine, have you seen any examples of this taking place in Africa, where just last week they had the Bioeconomy Summit in Nairobi?
Yeah, it's It's interesting that you are speaking of Nairobi because it happens that in IFAD we invest in East Africa mostly into the dairy development. So we have dairy projects in Kenya, Nairobi, Tanzania, Rwanda, and one of the big things that we are doing is working with the dairy producers to use the cow dung to produce biogas. So that has been, I mean, you would imagine that in the rural areas, energy is something that is not in every luxury, but those biogas projects have transformed the life of the rural women because it is producing energy, lightening for the houses. It is producing the energy for cooking so that women can be able to do other type of work rather than spending the whole day looking for the fire fuel thing. And it's one of the things that we see that is coming up to be a success story. And on top of that, we are working with the GCF to mobilize additional climate finance so that we can, I mean, methane is one of the big things in dairy production to make sure that we are greening the dairy production in East Africa. And that's one of the technologies that I can mention. But again, beside farmers and women, we also support a lot of youth activities. So we have Agripreneur Youth Hub in Cameroon. And what they do every single year, they train 75 young people who are involved into biofertilizer making, who are involved into the green storage facilities. So we see that, again, to be one of the other activities that are promising, but also not only targeting regular farmers, that are targeting young people and also creating jobs.
Great. I think the dairy sector has an opportunity to both create a lot of energy, but also to reduce its emissions through all the work that's being done. And so it's quite exciting. Secretary Suazo, are there some examples from Honduras you can share?
Yes, actually, Honduras is making some progress in building a circular bioeconomy, but sometimes we don't have any other option because agriculture, the modern agriculture that we are practicing is very high externally input technology focused. Like you have to buy fertilizers, you have to buy technology that, thanks God, we have technology, but it's very expensive. So when you come from a country where most of the population live under poverty, and those are farmers, those are rural people, it is like there is no way for us to be different than circular kind of economy farmers. Anyway, I think that we are going into the use of biopesticides as well, not only biofertilizers. And this is based on the use of residuals, especially coffee. The coffee sector is doing great examples from organizing themselves into cooperatives and then becoming kind of organic producers and getting all kind of accreditations that the consumers worldwide are demanding. And it is very attractive as well when you get this bag of coffee and you see all the brands and all the sales there that say, it's organic, it's social, this is protecting the environment, it's protecting biodiversity, etc. So I think we are doing good work on that. But at the same time, there is the use of, as well, sugarcane residuals or bagasso, and producing some kind of electricity or biodiesel and all other kind of materials. Well, beyond energy bioinput, I think we are also adopting a kind of new culture for using bio fertilizers. In the last 2 years, we have kind of increasing or certified from the minister about 20 factories of biofertilizers. But more important than that is that we are also consuming it, and to some extent depending less on inputs that are not produced in the country. I think that there is a lot of more to do on this topic. It's very important. Again, agroforestry is also part of the examples. The same example with coffee. This year, we have been able to, let's say, plant or replant like 20 million new plants of coffee with varieties that are tolerant to some diseases that are kind of caused or created for high temperatures of climate change. Right now, we are planning to start a new project for 100 million new plants of coffee. So we are gonna, how do you say, replanting all the plantation. And that is part of answers to climate change, to adaptation, mitigation, both of them together, or circular economy, etc. But I think that still we have a long way to do, especially on producing energy, which is very expensive in any economy, and also reducing the cost of the production of the farmers. So when the miracle of producing occurs or happens, and you have the products, there is another miracle that needs to be occurred, is to have a good price for the food that you have produced. It's the fair trade or commercialization. But if we are able to lower the cost of the production because of circular economy, we are already making some progress. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Getting those new varieties of coffee plants to replace, those 30 or 40-year-old plants that aren't productive anymore, and those that are resistant to drought and resistant to disease is very important. And, taking out a coffee tree is no easy task. I was on a farm just a week ago where I was looking at the technology, and I don't think I could actually do that myself. So we have about 6 minutes for maybe some final comments. So if I could ask the two panelists and then Director General to close up. Dr. Gerardine, what are your final comments? What are your thoughts about a new narrative for agriculture, one that looks at agriculture as part of the solution, one that looks at a circular bioeconomy, one that looks at agriculture in a positive way?
Yeah, I work for the small producers around the world, so it's really important that one of the narrative I say that to look at them as a business owners and support their businesses to be viable. That is one of the big things. So the area that we did not touch is around the trade. And when I used to be the Minister of Agriculture, I used to say that trade or markets are one of the killers of agricultural production in Africa. The reason behind that is that sometimes you find farmers are producing food, but it's not only for home consumption. They need to make an income. They need to make economies to do other things that they are supposed to be doing, to educate their children, to cater for their health, everything else that is needed in a family. The income is coming from that job that they are doing, which is agriculture. So one of the things that we do at IFAD is to make sure that we are working on a policy level so that we can remove the trade barriers that are stopping farmers for getting to the market. But also investing, some of the farmers that are dealing with the big companies will tell them, we had someone who said the cassava, who has the cassava company, the big problem is the raw material. So, the raw material may be there, but it's not of the quality that the processing plant wants. So we invest in farmers to support them to make sure that they are, we are investing in standards, we are supporting them into the post-harvest management, storage facilities, cooling systems so that their product can be able to move from one level to the market. So market is one of the big things that we need to be looking at carefully. But also, since I work for the small-scale farmers, making sure that we are increasing the bargaining powers, because sometimes it's, the bargaining is not equal, so making sure that we are raising their voices, that we are increasing their capacity to negotiate on the market so that they can be able to be equal negotiator. Those are the small things that we may say they are not as important, but they are super important for their business to be viable for the sustainability.
Farming is a business, and we have to remember that. And we have to help farmers be successful in their business and not burden them with so many regulations and policies that make it difficult for them to farm in a difficult environment with climate change. Any final thoughts, Secretary Suazo?
Well, as I start this conversation, I will say again that climate change is kind of making us reflect on the way we are doing agriculture, but not only agriculture, any other activities. And again, climate change is kind of revealing that economy is not more important than the environment, but both of them are not more important than human beings. And we humans have the opportunity to make all these good initiatives, actions, and also be smart enough to find a way to cope with these situations. We might be able to develop new varieties tolerant to drought. We might be able to create and build all the infrastructure to harvest water. And I hope we are also able to have access to technology, but access that is possible, that is not so expensive, that it is available, and at the end, we might have people not living on poverty and not living with hunger. Okay.
And we need those financial institutions that spoke today to make sure that all that money gets to the small farmer, not just to the governments and to large farmers. To close up, Director General, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lloyd. I would like to add up 3 thoughts. One of them is related with infrastructure that Secretary Suazo mentioned. We need to invest in rural connectivity and digital alphabetization, the only way to empower small farmers, especially young and women. Secondly, we are beginning to make all efforts in traceability and certification. We have to demonstrate where the food is coming from. Very, very important. And the last comment is related with international trade. Let me express my concern because international trade is affected by current geopolitical instability and chronic weakening of multilateral trade rules. On top of that, there are menaces of a new generation of non-tariff barriers. Meantime, we in the continent, we have a problem because the intra-block trade is just 14%, whereas in the case of European Union is 65%. We have to promote trade, to foster trade between the member countries of the continent, since supposedly we don't have tariff escalation. Mm-hmm. So we need to take care and to export within the continent. This is very, very important. Thank you to all.
Thank you, Director General. You know, ever since trade has blossomed, especially in this century, and the world economy is stronger than it's ever been before, life indicators are better than they've ever been before, people are starting to bash trade. But we've all been a beneficiary of trade. And it's also important for climate change and sustainability to move goods from where they're produced well to another part of the world where maybe it's not produced as well, where they can't produce that food. So trade is a very good theme to wrap up on. I want to thank all of our panelists and commentary, and I'd like you all to join me in a round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you.
Muy bien.